We are at a very interesting point in Africa where the population by 2050 will be 2.5 billion people on the continent of Africa. Most of them will be under the age of 25. Currently, there's a shortage of 70 million basic housing in Africa. I mean, what that means is that people are living in slums, to put it bluntly. There's an energy transition going on in the rest of the world that require critical minerals, most of them found in Africa. 60% of all unused arable land is in Africa. Africa has been poised to be the giant for decades. But now is probably the time, and we're going to talk about industrialization, because I think for a long time there's been a discussion about energy access, but energy access to charge your cell phone and have a light bulb in your house. Unfortunately, that is not going to cut it. So as policymakers, and I have distinguished ministers before me, and I'm sure this is what makes them sleep like a baby, where they wake up every 2 hours crying, it must be a very daunting task to deliver with limited resources. And one of the things that we didn't have a chance to explore in our last discussion was, where do you see the role of nuclear energy in your economies, given the growth projections that you want? And where do you see in your economies these, what they call hyperscalers? What is going to consume this energy? I know everyone is talking about quadrupling their requirement for energy. Maybe I start at the end with our host from Rwanda.
Thank you very much. We are speaking about 600 million people currently who don't have access to energy in Africa. So which means even today, we are not being able to meet our demand. That's a problem. The second problem, all African countries, we are fast-growing economies, which means we need industrialization. Our demand will grow as our population will develop. So we need even much more. Not only we are starting from, I would say, from negative, but also we need to supply much more. Second, we need to also speak of sustainability, environmental sustainability. Fortunately, nuclear energy contributes to all those three aspects. One aspect is generation of energy, energy security. We know nuclear energy is one of the most reliable source of energy. It's baseload. It doesn't change depending on the weather. And it's really reliable. Even the cycle for fueling is quite long. So nuclear energy is very well positioned to address the issue of energy security in Africa, especially even for Rwanda. The second aspect of energy is equity or energy access. Equity also includes the cost. It must be available, but also accessible to rural population. That's why we are in this conference, in this summit, we focused on SMR, small and modular reactors, which doesn't need the high investment cost than traditional nuclears and can be affordable. The last aspect is environmental sustainability in two ways. The first way is how the energy source affects the environment. So nuclear energy is a clean energy source as it doesn't emit harmful emissions that affect climate. The other way around, also of sustainability, nuclear energy is also not vulnerable to climate change. Traditionally, we believe the hydropower as the most reliable source of energy, but with the climate change, we are seeing that nuclear, even hydro, is becoming vulnerable, as an example of the Zambezi River that the Right Honorable Prime Minister of Rwanda has shared previously. So really, I think nuclear check the 3 boxes of energy trilemma, and it has to be considered in the energy mix of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is indeed true that we have a fairly fast-growing population across the continent. And this population needs to be taken care of in terms of access to energy. But more importantly, for Africa to develop meaningfully, industrialization is going to continue to play an increasingly important role. All this put together mean that we need to be sure that we have got security of energy supply. But it's not just security of energy supply. Once you have secured supply of energy, you must be sure that that energy then reaches people, that people have access to the energy. One of the ways to guarantee security and access of energy, of course, is the matter of grid stability. And this is where nuclear energy comes in handy. It has been proven across the world that nuclear energy is resilient, it's reliable, and it's, above all, it's clean. It's clean. And therefore, it's going to be a very important component in the energy mix in most of our countries. For instance, in Kenya, we have a fairly rich mix of energy, comprising of geothermal sources, hydro, solar, of course, and wind. But we intend to deliberately make it richer by embracing nuclear energy. As a matter of fact, we have set for ourselves a target of promulgating the first nuclear plant in the year 2034. So that plant's construction is poised to start or to begin in the year 2027. So we need, therefore, to work on mechanisms to make our populace embrace this very important technology, which in my view is an idea whose time has come for Africa. For Africa. We have got a fairly large gap in the understanding of what nuclear energy entails amongst the elites such as us and the populace down there. That's a task that we need to embark on to bridge that gap, to ensure that the acceptability of this new technology is widespread, to make its implementation seamless, and above all, to help us grow our economies together and ensure prosperity for our people. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. But if you would, I would deliver in French, if it doesn't matter. Should I speak French or yes. English is fine? French is fine. Okay, thank you very much. Je suis très heureux d'être à ce sommet, un sommet très crucial sur l'énergie, l'innovation énergétique, surtout nucléaire. Alors, chez moi, au Mali, nous avons adopté une stratégie nationale pour l'émergence et le développement durable, qui comporte plusieurs axes. Et on a ciblé des régions pour le développement économique du pays. Mais quand on a élaboré cela, on s'est rendu compte quand même que une denrée fondamentale, essentielle, c'est l'énergie. Parce que sans énergie, on ne pourra jamais mettre en œuvre cette stratégie nationale d'émergence et de développement durable qui court jusqu'en 2063. Il est très très important pour nous d'avoir de l'énergie pour amorcer notre développement économique et social. Évidemment, dans notre mix énergétique, nous avons mis l'accent effectivement sur les énergies renouvelables. Mais ce qui est évident aujourd'hui chez moi, nous connaissons une crise énergétique sans précédent Cela est dû au fait que dans notre mix énergétique, le combustible prend le dessus. Les hydrocarbures, nos centrales fonctionnent aux hydrocarbures à 70%, ce qui nous pénalise beaucoup parce que nous sommes un pays continental, nous ne sommes pas producteurs de pétrole, et donc nous sommes tributaires du prix du pétrole sur le marché international, ce qui nous pénalise beaucoup. Alors c'est pourquoi les plus hautes autorités ont estimé qu'il est temps de se tourner vers le nucléaire, qui est une énergie durable, fiable. Et si c'est bien maîtrisé, c'est sécurisé aussi. Et c'est ce qui va nous permettre de mettre en place, de mettre en œuvre cette stratégie nationale d'émergence pour le développement durable. Sans l'énergie nucléaire, nous ne pensons pas que cette stratégie pourra être mise en œuvre. C'est vrai, il faut peut-être démystifier un peu l'usage de l'énergie nucléaire, parce que quand on parle de l'énergie nucléaire, immédiatement on pense déjà à l'usage militaire. Mais il y a beaucoup d'utilisations faites par l'énergie nucléaire. Je pense au domaine de la médecine, de l'agriculture, des recherches. Chez nous, le pays est très vaste. Le pays est très vaste. On manque de réseaux. Et parfois, l'agriculture, qui est le socle de notre économie, on n'arrive pas à tirer profit. Pourquoi? Parce qu'aujourd'hui, les agriculteurs n'arrivent pas à écouler leurs produits. Quand ils finissent de produire, la production ne peut pas écouler, faute d'énergie. Donc vous voyez, nous avons bien compris maintenant qu'il faut aller vers l'énergie nucléaire pour vraiment amorcer notre développement économique et social. Et nous sommes certains, à la sortie de ce sommet, nous pourrons trouver des partenaires pour discuter du financement, parce que c'est de cela qu'il s'agit aussi. Le financement n'est pas garanti, et c'est ce que nous recherchons aussi. Je vous remercie.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on the issue of the farmers are not able to sell their produce because of lack of energy?
Yes. Pourquoi j'ai dit cela? Parce que l'énergie, aujourd'hui, nous avons compris que la transition énergétique va de pair avec l'agriculture. Dans le temps, l'agriculture, chez nous, c'était juste l'agriculture familiale. Mais aujourd'hui, nous avons l'intention de développer notre agriculture, que ce soit une agriculture de développement. Mais cela n'est pas possible si les agriculteurs n'ont pas la possibilité de stocker et de transformer sur place les produits. Aujourd'hui, il est très difficile pour les agriculteurs d'écouler leurs produits. Si les produits ne sont pas enlevés au bout de 2 jours, par exemple, les produits périssent, faute d'énergie, parce qu'ils n'ont pas de chambre froide pour conserver. Donc, nous avons compris qu'il faudrait peut-être lier le développement énergétique à l'agriculture aussi, parce que notre économie repose en majorité sur l'agriculture. Donc, cette transition énergétique va de pair avec le développement agricole chez nous.
Thank you.
Oops. Thank you. Basically, for Togo, we have the same issues as all our other peers. So, but like I said, the elephant in the room is industrialization, and behind is the job, because we do think that 600 million is a rallying cry, but behind is you have 600 million who does not have access to electricity, but you may have X million who does not have access to meaningful jobs. So behind that, this rallying cry is to be able to afford and to give enough electricity, enough energy to be able to industrialize, to have data centers, to not be left out of the AI revolution, because when people want to invest, what they ask, what is your energy mix, and where does your energy come from? If you say, okay, half of my energy is coming from outside, they say, okay, it's better to go to the other country. So we need to have enough domestic production to be able to satisfy and exceed the need of industries and people. By satisfying the need of people, we will do what the government has to do, is to provide for the basic need of the people. But behind that, by providing energy for industries, for data centers, we'll be able to create jobs, to give decent jobs to the majority of the people behind. And why do we need nuclear energy in our mix? Nuclear energy it will be considered base. And the other one are intermittent, and we also need to complement it with LNG gas supply, because they get into industrial processes also. So where we see it, we don't want to get out of the revolution of SMR and MMR, so we need to have our foot inside and go along. We play the long game, because as they say, when you build a nuclear power station, it will be for the next 50 and 100 years. So we need to get into it. We need to follow in the footsteps of my good friend from Rwanda, who have been able to leverage and start building capacity inside. We look forward to do that. And basically, that's the way we think we are going to advance. And the second thing that we would like to emphasize is we need to get into the ecosystem of the nuclear energy by maybe cooperating with our good friend from Niger. And there's a lot of things in the ecosystem, including not only extracting the uranium, but creating the nuclear fuels for those things, and also discard or get rid of the spent fuels. So there may be enough for all of us to get into it, but we may not have to, all of us African countries, to be in all the value chain of the nuclear one. We need to pick and maybe specialize between ourselves what each and every one will do, and it will require a lot of commitment, a lot of trust between one another to get things going.
That's a very interesting statement that requires trust. The Prime Minister talked about Niger providing uranium to the rest of the continent. But when you have an energy trilemma, there's also a geopolitical trilemma. Yeah. And the geopolitical trilemma is competition, economic security, and economic interdependence. And it seems, even though our African countries are small, we seem to be in competition with each other. So it is messing up the interdependence and the economic security of each other. And I know many of us have ratified the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. And this is a question for any of you. Where do you see, and a lot of us also, African countries, have also talked about the West African power pool, the East African power pool, Southern African power pool, and then the general African power pool. But it will require that we work together. We are interdependent, and so that we have economic security. How can we manage this trilemma for our common good and our common development as Africans?
So I think it is more than clear that no African country can operate in isolation. You can't be an island. That's why we are actually advocating for more and more integration. When it comes to energy in particular, we are alive with the fact that for synergy, really, we need to be able to make it possible for those countries that are able to generate more excess energy to sell the excess energy to the rest of the African countries. And for those that have got a deficit in energy, to be able to buy freely. And that's why the infrastructure development as a shared resource is increasingly important, and it informs the regional power pools, which need to be strengthened. Especially the East African power pool is at the formative stage, but we need to fast track it to be able to be operationalized the quickest possible, so that Africa then moves together, as it were, without leaving any part or country behind.
Oui, je crois que l'énergie, c'est le secteur vraiment où on a besoin plus de coopération et qui est beaucoup plus avantageuse que n'importe quel secteur. Je prends l'exemple pour l'interconnexion. Vous prenez l'interconnexion entre les pays, par exemple, ça peut beaucoup aider. Celui qui est déficitaire peut enlever sur le réseau. Celui qui est excédentaire peut injecter sur le réseau. Donc la coopération dans le domaine énergétique est fondamentale. Elle est très d'ailleurs sollicitée parce que l'interconnexion nous permet d'avancer, de produire, de mutualiser les efforts. Moi, aujourd'hui au Mali, je prends toujours l'exemple pour moi parce que j'ai un problème crucial aujourd'hui. On n'est pas suffisamment connecté avec le voisin, mais on a des projets en vue pour l'interconnexion qui va du Mali jusqu'au Ghana. Et c'est cela qui va permettre vraiment à nos populations d'avoir un accès facile à l'électricité à moindre coût. L'interconnexion est très intéressante dans ce sens. C'est pourquoi je voudrais vraiment intervenir sur cet aspect. Il nous faut de la coopération dans le domaine énergétique, parce qu'un pays, je vais prendre l'exemple par exemple sur le Togo, qui, vous m'excuserez, je parle de la taille, la petitesse de la superficie, pas en termes de population ou de la superficie par exemple. Si le Togo produisait plus qu'il ne faut consommer, il faudrait que le Togo trouve un moyen d'injecter l'excédent énergétique quelque part. Et le Mali, qui fait 1 245 000 km², est très vaste. Et ça permet au Mali d'absorber l'excédent que le Togo produit. Donc la coopération dans ce secteur est très vitale et très nécessaire.
Thank you. You mentioned the geopolitical trilemma. How do you balance trust on one hand and a bit of competition between African states? I would share, I believe the best way is to establish a win-win situation where each party benefits from the partnership. And I also share the optimism that I am seeing this happening by itself, which means if we become intentional as policymakers, we'll get far. For example, we have been discussing the East African power pool for some time. It's moving well, but slowly. But our countries didn't wait for the East African power pool. Already Rwanda and Uganda, we are trading electricity since 2 years ago. Rwanda and Tanzania, we are almost closing the discussions. I understand also Uganda and Kenya are already. So I'm saying we have already bilateral agreement because we all benefit. Someone has excess power, someone needs power, and when you don't exchange power, we help to stabilize both our grid by increasing the size of the grid. So that shows that if we have a win-win situation, the need will come. Then on that need, if we add a political will, we'll for sure get there.
I will be a little bit, I will tone a little bit down because everything works in perfect when you have enough electricity. But when hardships comes, each and every country resort to national, priorities. And we have experienced it when just a man-made one, when they wanted to cut, for example, the West African gas pipeline, and all countries were relying on it. So we received less electricity from Ghana. So I like Ghana, so it's my good friend. Half of my family is from Ghana, no problem. But when it goes down, they prioritize, each and every country will prioritize its own country. So it means that we need to build mechanism, because trust, it will not come just by fiat. It has to be ingrained in some sort of mechanism that will say, okay, if you have less electricity than you used to send to me, then I'm entitled to 20% of this less. Otherwise, then they'll cut everything, and then you feel shortchanged, because even Burkina Faso or Togo send its water, which fills the dam of Akosombo. So we should be entitled to some of electricity. And those are the type of things, it doesn't have to rely on, on very hard things, but it has to be written somewhere. When we agree on something, when you have enough electricity, we can agree on something and then put it in writing. And it will be a good way to have the trust and a good way to enhance energy cooperation in between us. And we are in the West African Power Pool. We are also moving very fast with a backbone, the northern backbone, going to Burkina Faso and going down to Togo, from Nigeria to Burkina Faso, and also the medium one from Nigeria to and in the middle of Togo to Ivory Coast. We already have the one coming from Nigeria to Ghana through Togo and Benin. So we are implementing by the next semester the day-ahead energy market, where we will be able to buy from one another, let's say, excess capacity. And we also have a mechanism to guarantee payment, because those are the type of thing which is also part of the trust, because we are ready to take things and then we don't pay. So by having let's say, a clearing mechanism that makes sure that each and every kilowatt hour or gigawatt hour that you send to your neighbor by, let's say, solidarity is paid back, because you have to pay yourself and you have to improve and maintain your infrastructure.
Honorable Wandae, you recently issued a regulation on open access. I think it's Kenya, South Africa are piloting this open access system, where I think the SMR and the MR will come into place, where I don't need to rely on the state utility to fund my power plant. I can then look for customers and sell to those customers. I mean, do you think that this could be a solution for funding SMRs and MRs, given that we seem to be in a similar situation to where the US was early part of the last century, where, like Africa, large land mass, rural communities, they set up these rural electrification cooperatives. And we know Kenya has huge cooperatives in the things that it does. Do you see this cooperative model as something that can be utilized for power generation and what they're calling behind the meter?
Well, you see, the ideal situation is to have a multi-pronged approach, where the utilities, the state-run utilities, if I may call them so, are able to still distribute and sell power to consumers. But on the other hand, you liberalize the market, the energy market, to enable more players to participate in that space. That's essentially what we are aiming at. The end result is that the consumer is going to be the beneficiary, because you'll have multiple alternatives or sources of power. As it is, we have seen challenges with what can be referred to as a monopoly, in terms of distribution and eventual billing of the power to the consumers. But all in all, we still need to work on mechanisms to attract financing. Financing is very key, not just in generation, but all the way from generation to transmission, distribution, and eventually in last mile connectivity and billing. It is important also to understand that potential investors in our countries are increasingly looking at our energy capacity. Okay. Yes, it goes without saying that investors will follow energy, for lack of better terminology. Yes. Our constrained energy capacity is really a drawback in terms of being able to attract investors who will put in their money and help us grow our economies and enable our young people to get jobs.
I think in the last session, we did speak about hyperscalers. You know, we talked about data centers. The minister from Togo has talked about that. The minister from Mali has talked about agriculture. But seeing that there will be 2.5 billion people, housing seems to be somewhere we should be thinking about. When I was researching for this panel, and I asked myself, UAE, those of you who have been to Abu Dhabi, have been to Dubai, how is it that they're able to build 3 large nuclear power plants? And I wanted to find out, where does the power go? And you'll be surprised. The power goes to cement, aluminium, steel, and of course, data centers.
Most of our grid is not strong enough to carry a gigawatt of energy that is in a traditional nuclear power plant. But you can deploy an SMR or micro nuclear reactors next to the factory. Then you enable the production. The investor in the SMR or micro SMR has the guarantee of offtake from the factory, and the factory itself has the guarantee of power, so that synergy can enable other sectors, especially construction sector. Like in Rwanda, one of the sector that we see that will be demanding a lot of resources is the construction sector, because it's really, our population is growing fast, our urban population, and we see an opportunity, economic opportunity for job creation, for economic growth, by making the most locally for the needed scale of construction.
Merci. Effectivement, le développement des petits réacteurs modulaires peut être une solution très intéressante pour nous. Comme vous le savez, Mali est un pays dont le sous-sol regorge d'énormes potentialités. Et ce que je viens d'évoquer tout de suite, notre stratégie nationale pour l'émergence et le développement durable, l'un des pôles, l'un des axes de cette stratégie, c'est effectivement le secteur minier. Le secteur minier consomme beaucoup d'énergie. Et nous sommes pénalisés aujourd'hui un peu par rapport aux investissements dans ce secteur, parce que nous n'avons pas à fournir correctement l'énergie nécessaire pour l'exploitation de nos ressources minières. Donc c'est très important pour nous de se tourner vers les petits réacteurs peut-être modulaires nucléaires, qui pour nous est une énergie fiable et durable. Parce que nous fondons beaucoup d'espoir sur nos ressources minières. Mais la difficulté quand même qui se trouve dans ce secteur, c'est que l'énergie n'est pas à hauteur de souhait. Ça, il faut le dire. Avec les hydrocarbures, on a vu que ça ne pourra pas nous amener là où nous voulons. Parce que nous fondons beaucoup d'espoir sur le secteur minier, comme je l'ai dit, pour amorcer notre développement économique et social. Donc c'est pourquoi les plus hautes autorités ont décidé, dans le mix énergétique, effectivement, l'énergie nucléaire fait partie, mais nous avions peut-être mis l'accent sur les énergies renouvelables, le solaire, parce que le Mali, il faut le reconnaître, était un pays ensoleillé. Je crois que nous sommes le 5e pays le plus ensoleillé du monde, donc on avait mis l'accent sur ça. Mais pour nous, ça, c'est des énergies d'appoint. L'énergie la plus durable qui puisse nous permettre, et surtout le secteur minier, de vraiment prendre son envol. Sinon, je crois que c'est l'énergie nucléaire. Donc, dans ce domaine, nous invitons les investisseurs à... Ils sont frileux parce que quand l'énergie n'est pas suffisante, ce n'est pas facile. Ça, on le reconnaît. C'est pourquoi nous nous sommes tournés vers cette source d'énergie qui doit nous permettre d'assurer une fourniture correcte à ces entreprises minières. Et dans le futur, je crois que les investisseurs se rendront compte que l'énergie qui est produite maintenant est suffisante pour vraiment mener des activités minières dans mon pays.
What I really see is key to developing SMR is first to have some, like in a real estate model, to have an anchor tenant. And I was thinking about my colleague here saying that the mining industry needs one. So you can build something, you can be innovative and have, coalesce around an SMR project, multiple or different mining industries that could, jumpstart or kickstart the FID, the final investment decision for the SMR, because they will be the one that will be benefiting from that first and foremost. We need to get all the people on board at the same time, have the anchor tenant model, and themselves, they will be de-risking and, subcontract the energy provision to the IPP that they will be jointly owned. In fact, that's the model that they do in oil and exploration and everything. One start, and then you sell some share in this reservoir, and you exchange the reservoir in other places. So I really think that we are at the beginning of trying to find financing innovations and bringing people on board for SMR. It will not be, the government and the administration will have to do the heavy lifting of putting in place the regulatory environment, putting in place necessary what is base, what is required from the government. But in the end, it should be the private sector, and especially leveraging the minings, leveraging other heavy consumption, heavy consumers, let's say, to build those smelters. Because, as you said, as my friend said, the investors will go where the energy is. So they went to UAE because UAE put the energy in front. That's also why I also think that we need, as much as we can, to provide energy capacity in all the countries so that people come and people invest. But country which has mining, like which has bauxite, for example, like Guinea, should have, should be the prime example to build or try to jumpstart an SMR so that there will be the smelter for aluminum over there. That's the way I think we can move forward.
So I think, Andrew, just to add on to that, is that in my view, the SMRs offer very, very important opportunity in terms of developing localized solutions to local energy problems. because of their versatility. Being versatile and flexible, they are able to address most of the localized problems. But we need to consciously cut down on the bureaucratic red tape so that we move from planning now to implementation.
Yeah.
We need to develop timelines, for implementing these new energy technology projects so that our people can reap the full benefit of this new technology. Of course, working closely and hand in hand with IAEA and other international agencies for purposes of regulation. Yeah. Because as I've seen in the recent past, the debate on nuclear energy has gained traction in a big way. And the questions that we are confronted with from time to time is the safety, the safety concerns, which we need to address proactively, yes, by explaining to people, making them understand that what we are talking about here is not nuclear warfare. It is nuclear energy for our own development and prosperity. Yeah, thank you.
You know, one of the things that I find so interesting about the African continent, and those of us who live here, is that there's nowhere you will go and not find a diesel generator.
Yeah.
These diesel generators are funded by us, individuals, companies, private sector. And there's 120 gigawatts of standby diesel generation in Africa, 120 gigawatts, more than all our installed capacity. And according to an IFC report, we spend $40 billion a year buying diesel to power our standby diesel generators. It's huge amounts of money. I think at some stage we need to find a way which we can channel that private sector money towards MRs, SMRs, which have got a more longer term. I think we have a huge positive opportunity to develop these technologies. So with that note, we've come to the end of the ministerial panel, and I would like to thank the ministers for their time. Thank you very much.